This podcast is sponsored by AXA Farm Insurance. AXA offers tailored cover to fit your unique needs, whether it's public liability or protection for your family home, outbuildings or farm vehicles. Based in Athlone, the AXA Farm team of agri-specialists and regional managers work together to ensure you receive the seamless support you need. Switching to AXA is easy thanks to an innovative online service that enables you to quickly and easily find the best cover for your needs. For more information, head to axa.ie. AXA Insurance Stack is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland. Thanks for listening, and we hope you enjoy the show.
Hello and welcome to AgriFocus, the podcast from Agriland, brought to you in association with AXA Insurance. On today's episode, we are going to discuss the role that livestock, in particular cows, play in our food system and society in general. A documentary entitled World Without Cows has opened up the conversation about the role of farming in the survival of our planet. Through interviews with farmers, ranchers, scientists and other experts in agriculture and environmental science, World Without Cows delves into the complex and often surprising ways cows impact our world. The documentary is led by two award-winning journalists who now work in agriculture, Michelle Michael and Brandon Whitworth. The filmmakers travelled to more than 40 global locations to examine the cultural and economic significance of cows. Agriland had the opportunity to sit down and talk to one of the filmmakers, Michelle Michael, this week at Alltech Dunboyne. Michelle Michael, thank you so much for joining us on Agriland. We have just watched World Without Cows, the documentary you put together with your co-filmmaker, Brandon. It's a really important film for the agricultural industry. But tell me, first of all, how it came about or how you two got involved.
So Brandon and I both are full-time employees of Alltech. We work in a media department there, and for the past 10, maybe 13 years, we've been telling stories, unique stories around the world about farmers doing different things in the name of sustainability. Each story is a little bit different everywhere we've been. So together we've been to 22 countries, 5 different continents. We don't have this agricultural background. We come from the world of journalism, the same world that you're from now. And we would go to these farms, we would meet these farmers and objectively look at them and feel so much admiration and hope after watching what they do, the sacrifices they make to feed and nourish the world. And as soon as we would leave the farm, hop on an airplane, scroll through your phone, turn on the TV, open a newspaper, open a magazine, it doesn't matter where it's coming from. The narrative around agriculture is quite negative. It somehow didn't match what we saw firsthand. And so we set out on a journey to really try to understand how cows help us or hurt us on our path to a sustainable future.
It's really interesting, and I have to ask you about not coming from an agricultural background. While you do work for Alltech, were you able to put aside your biases one way or another to try and get as impartial a view of the industry or what a world without cows would entail?
I think that's a really important question. Because Brandon and I come from the world of journalism, that's exactly how we approached this documentary. And I have to hand it to the CEO and president of Alltech, Dr. Mark Lyons. He commissioned the film 100%. But he gave Brandon and I full editorial independent control. And so the story that we found, I think Mark believed the story that we would find would be what we found. And so he sent us on this journey. He financed it. He gave us independent editorial control. And I think that's so powerful that he believed so much in the power of storytelling and what we would find that he sent us out to do that.
I think that's really important for the audience to know that you were given that editorial control. Now, moving to the content of the documentary itself, you went to so many countries across the world, so many different types of farming enterprises. Can you tell us were there common themes that emerged in different countries for you both?
Absolutely. As we talk to people around the world, and some of those conversations started during COVID when we were just doing the early research phase of the documentary. We would ask people, "What does a world without cows look like to you?" And it turned out all their answers kind of fell into three main categories. It was cows and their impacts on cultures and economy, cows' impact on feeding and nourishing the world, and then ultimately the cows and how they impact our climate because that's undeniable as well.
Absolutely. And then in terms of the frame of reference, when you were putting together the timeline for the documentary, who you would speak to, the countries that you would visit, what were the important factors that you both decided you needed to have?
I think the biggest factor is the science. We truly wanted to follow the science. I think we live in a world of misinformation. I mean, look, you're entitled to your opinions, but not your own facts. There's a lot of information out there that is just not even based on anything. It's just said, repeated, it then becomes a fact. And we really wanted to counter that. It was very important to us to follow the science, to reach out to top people in their fields. So climatologists, science, human health nutritionists, farmers, ranchers themselves, even the opposite side, because right, if we're going to come to the table and have conversations, you can't just have one side of the story. You have to talk to somebody who has a very different perspective. And that's why we talked to Greg.
That was very interesting in the documentary also, the fact that it was very nuanced. So solutions that might work in one particular country or one particular state may not work elsewhere. For example, in Ireland, we prize our grass-based pasture system. We make it a premium grass-fed beef in terms of European designations. Yet in America and the likes of Kansas, the feedlots were very much considered the epitome of reducing the environmental impact of cows. So it's very different depending on what country you're in.
It absolutely is different. I don't think you can have one model. I think it's going to take multiple models for us all to be able to rise to the challenge of this monumental challenge, because the next 30 years are the most important there have ever been in the history of agriculture. We have to produce as much food. Take the next 30 years. Imagine what we've produced up to this point. We have to produce that in the next 30 years. That's a huge challenge. It's going to take multiple. You can't just have large scale, small scale, feedlots, pasture. You have to have it all. You have to have it all. And we have to find the way to do all of those things the most sustainably that we can so that we can all have a thriving life on this planet.
And just to let our audience know as well, when you talk about the science, which was one element of it, and you spoke to the farmers, but it wasn't all just one message in this documentary. I mean, there's a very strong vegan voice in there that says we should be moving more towards plant-based diet or plant-based production as well. So it really did give an overview of many different opinions.
It really did. And I think, there was a moment that Brandon and I both just kind of looked at each other and smiled when we were talking to Greg, who was the vegan featured in our documentary. We were sitting in his apartment or his flat in London near Trafalgar Square. And, we were kind of wrapping up the interview. And he said, you guys, I really wish people could go on these farms and really see how their food is made. I think it would really change their perspective. Brandon and I looked at each other and we said, Greg, that's literally what farmers around the world say when we go to their farms. I wish people would come to my farm and see how my food is made. It's really interesting to me that the two sides are closer together than they even realize in most cases.
It's true. And the other thing that I found very interesting from the documentary, and the people listening to this podcast, if they watch the documentary, they might find it interesting as well, is as you said, the science around it, where there might be a common narrative around something. So, for example, Greg in the documentary, and if people watch it, I have to comment on the fact that if anyone has ever watched Grey's Anatomy, he has a large resemblance to Dr. McDreamy in Grey's Anatomy.
Tell him that.
Well, I thought it was him at first. But when he mentioned about the misappropriation of crops given to animals that should be given to humans, I thought it was interesting that the science then showed that by actually giving the crops through meal to the animals actually ends up feeding more humans and I think that it was important that these kind of points in the documentary are often different voices are allowed to say what they believe to be true or what they believe to be fact, but then also the alternative science narrative comes out as well.
Absolutely. When we created the documentary, we did not create it to be pro-cow, anti-cow. We created this documentary to spark a much-needed deeper dialogue, and I think that we're seeing that happen at private screenings around the world, at film festivals around the world. Look, we had a vegan stand-up in California. We were in a screening at a film festival in Southern California, San Pedro, and just the nature of where we were located in the United States, we were in a room full of vegans. And after the screening, the vegan lady, sweet little lady, stood up in the back, raised her hand, and this was during the Q&A, which we thought we were going to have tomatoes thrown at us. She said, I'm vegan and I'm always going to be a vegan, but the way you presented the documentary and the information made me question, what do I really know about being a vegan? What is fact? And that was really an important point for us, where we realized we are creating something that is making people talk. Look, for a long time, people have been across the aisle just screaming at one another. We wanted to create something that would, I guess, set a new baseline for how to have these conversations.
Absolutely. Even the fact that you can show a documentary such as World Without Cows in a room full of vegans and have that conversation, it shows that there can be this and there can be that. There is nothing wrong with being a vegan, but there's also nothing wrong with being able to have a diet that includes protein-based meat as well.
That's absolutely correct. And we, in talking with human nutrition scientists, learned so much about what that means and what that means to human health. And there's a lot of important points there as well.
Now, can I ask you about the forum or the platform for a documentary such as this? It was obviously funded through, Alltech and through Dr. Mark Lyons. You work for Alltech yourself. And the reception, for example, in the screening here today has been somewhat positive because they're all from an agricultural or agricultural adjacent industry here. What about the pickup from mainstream media? How has the reception for the documentary been received in a more mainstream context?
It's difficult to say. I mean, we've had the reaction, and I think it's been quite positive, and it's really sparked some much needed conversation at film festivals during Q&As, for example, and on panels at film festivals. But I think it's quite early in the game to understand where this will land permanently. This is our first documentary that we've created, and I think it's a new space for us. So we're researching right now. We're hoping that the momentum from film festivals builds, and that there's opportunity to reach wider audiences on streaming platforms, for example.
Absolutely. And just when you mentioned the film festival, the documentary has already won several awards. I mean, that must be very, I suppose, heartwarming for yourself and Brandon, who put so much work into this to try and really get across what your vision for the documentary was and the story that you wanted to tell.
Yeah, really, it's been amazing. It was fun for us. We went from literally Rodeo Drive in Beverly Hills, which, you think about a story about cows screening at the Chinese theater, the iconic Chinese theater in Beverly Hills. We went from there to quite literally a rodeo in Iowa at a small film festival, which we screened in a library. And they're all important to us. They're all extremely important and I think extremely valuable.
What do you think that you learned as a result of compiling this documentary that perhaps you didn't know before, despite working for a company like Alltech?
Well, I think there's so much happening right now in the research space, right? Like, I always felt an admiration when I saw farmers and I saw their hard work. And then I always felt that admiration when I'm eating my meal at the end of a day. It's very important to respect that. There's so much research going into it. And I think what surprised me the most is you don't think ecologists and farmers work together. But they really are that they all have the same goal. We all want a thriving planet that we can all be on. And so you see this early research, for example, from Buck Island Ranch, a ranch in Florida, which has proven to be a sink for carbon. And then you hear like Dr. Betsy Boughton from Buck Island, and she's talking about how the research from that one ranch could be replicated in other subtropical regions like Brazil. So it's so early in the research, there's still so much to learn, but it's moving in the right direction, and I think that's powerful.
The audience that you set about really targeting when you're putting this documentary together. I feel that having watched it, it really does cross, many sectors, many cultures, but also many generations. It was and did have science in it, but it was at an understandable level, even for children, which I'm presuming is really a cohort that should know about where their food comes from also.
Absolutely. I think World Without Cows, there's a huge educational component that we are in the early stages of developing at this point, because I think it's important to develop that content so people can have the facts, have the science, even as you say, at an elementary level. Because I talk to farmers who have children in school around the world, and their children go to school and are also they hear the misinformation. It has to start somewhere, right? We have to get behind science and facts. And this is where agriculture needs to be better at telling its story. I think it's really, really important, because if you don't tell your story, people assume. They fill in the blanks where they want to, and it's not usually positive. And so it's important, starting from farmers to education. We have to start somewhere.
Absolutely. And finally, can I ask you where it's going to go next? World Without Cows has proven incredibly popular. It has already, conveyed a message about agriculture that I don't think has ever been comprehensively conveyed before. Are there plans for the future for something as a follow-on to this?
Yeah, we're actually working. Well, first of all, our website, worldwithoutcows.com, is a wealth of information. We're adding to it daily. We've just returned from Brazil, where we spent about 3 weeks exploring the pasture-based beef system. We shot some new content here in the south of Ireland, where we talk about the pasture-based dairy system. All those things will appear on our website, which I think is really important. We have lots and lots of private screenings. You can also request a screening on the website. As far as film festivals, we will be in Waco in the middle of July, Waco, Texas, for a film festival. You can go to the website if you have an organization that would like to request a screening. Right now, it's very difficult to get a distribution deal if you make it publicly available at this point. So we're not quite there yet. I think that it's more of a marathon than a sprint, and we're all learning as we go that it's not easy to sell a documentary, but I think this one is special, and I think it has a message that resonates with a lot of people. I don't think you have to be in the world of agriculture to care about it.
Absolutely. And I mean, it's one really that people who are very interested in environment and climate should also watch. So really just go onto the website there. They can put a request through and get more information.
Absolutely. And as I mentioned, there's so much information on that website. There's charts, there's graphs, there's facts that you can pull out. You can meet and click on different links to learn more about the people and the cultures that are featured in the documentary. It's really a wealth of information.
And particularly in this era where we have the term, which I hate, fake news or, fact checking, and are facts really facts? It is important that people have a resource like this website that is, it's impartial. It's just got science. It's got facts there. You can take whatever resources from it that you wish.
You can, and we reveal all the sources there. For example, the IPCC, the International Governmental Panel on Climate Change. We tell you who the source was for the studies that we're presenting.
Michelle Michael, thank you so much for giving us your time on AgriFocus today. That's all we have time for on this episode of AgriFocus. We hope you enjoyed the conversation. Please rate and review this podcast wherever you get your podcasts and share it with someone you think might like to listen. Until next time, goodbye and take care.
This podcast is sponsored by AXA Farm Insurance. AXA offers tailored cover to fit your unique needs, whether it's public liability or protection for your family home, outbuildings or farm vehicles. Based in Athlone, the AXA Farm team of agri-specialists and regional managers work together to ensure you receive the seamless support you need. Switching to AXA is easy thanks to an innovative online service that enables you to quickly and easily find the best cover for your needs. For more information, head to axa.ie. AXA Insurance Stack is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.